Sean Spicer, Senior Advisor and Spokesman for America First Action. Sean, how are you? Good morning, and thank you for coming back
Hey,
here.
Sean.
I think what she lays out is where the election hinges next year. Would you agree on that?
Well, when you look at the three states that were really close, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, there's no question that those are pivotal. President Trump won with 306 electoral votes. Pennsylvania alone is worth 20 of those electoral votes. He won Pennsylvania by just over 44,000 votes, which was 0.72 of a margin of victory. There's no question it's going to be a battleground this time around. But I think the big difference is the results the president has made. He is not theoretically talking about what he will do as president. He has a record of results.
I just wonder what's going to happen in some of these counties that did flip for Donald Trump, and they were promised big rebounds in their economy, their jobs. And as you know, Sean, if you dig in there, some of those counties have not benefited as much as the rest of the country. And that's going to be a big question if they stick with the president this time around.
Yeah, there's two questions here, right? One is the political logistics piece on the ground, if you will. And I think that the ground game and the data game that the RNC and the Trump campaign are playing this cycle is by far the best in the history of politics. I don't think either side would dispute that because of the ability that they've had to build off of the system that was created last cycle. So they know who they need to go to, what message they need to get to them at. And when you're playing with a game of inches, as we are in a state like Pennsylvania, that's the difference. In a presidential year, you're going to have a greater turnout than you are in a midterm. That's good for the president. Secondly, look, I think that there's two issues. One, if you look at manufacturing, which is really important in towns like the one he visited yesterday just north of Pittsburgh, manufacturing is going to be key. When the president since the president's come into office, there's been 500,000 more manufacturing jobs created, which is a reversal of the stagnant growth that occurred in the previous 2 years to his election. So that's positive for it. But one of the things that people have to understand about elections is a lot of it is gut. Do you feel things are going in the right direction? Do you feel that you've got a fighter in the White House? And I think on both scores, the president has a record where people know that he's going to stand up for them, he's going to fight for them, and he's going to deliver for them. That's something that whether or not it's improving as fast as some people like or not, the reality knows that this isn't a politician who's just coming and giving excuses. He's got results to show, and he's going to keep fighting and standing up for them.
In that sense, he's got a record. That's right. Here he is in Pennsylvania yesterday. Just listen here in Pittsburgh.
For generations, America greatness was forged and fueled and won by the extraordinary workers of this region. Pennsylvania steel raised the skyscrapers that built our cities. And I'll tell you what, those steel mills, U.S. Steel and all of them, they're expanding all over the place. New mills, new expansions.
That goes to the point that Sandra was making, and we'll see where that argument goes in a moment here. From Pennsylvania to Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin, that Rust Belt area is really going to be an interesting place to watch. Ari Fleischer on Joe Biden right now. We'll get you to comment on the competition. Watch.
Joe Biden is a weak front runner, and everybody knows it. He's the front runner simply because he's the front runner. And as soon as this field whittles and you get fewer candidates in there, someone is going to emerge, and you know it's not going to be Joe. You know, he's kind of like a paper straw. We're all just watching him dissolve before our very eyes.
Oh,
that's the Biden candidacy.
Oh. There's the metaphor. What do you think?
I love the paper straw analogy. He's spot on that. Look, I think people have got to remember to keep Biden in context. He was elected to the Senate in 1972 at age 29. He was reelected 6 times with scant opposition. This is a guy who politically hasn't taken a punch, at least in modern times. And when he ran for president twice, he failed epically. And we're seeing it all over again. The guy doesn't know how to run a good campaign. He's not a good candidate. He's mostly a media creation. And as Ari points out, he's the front runner because he's got high name ID and an association with a popular former Democratic president. That's it. And he's folding before our eyes because he didn't have the political mettle to be successful in the past, and he won't now.
He's got a lot of money. He's got some good poll numbers, too, so far. Sandra,
Sean,
so does Pete Buttigieg, so does Kamala Harris. They all have money, too, and I think that they're a fresh new face that points to the future. Granted, it's far, far left to where Joe Biden is, and that's going to be their political Achilles heel. But Biden's, just because he has money, and we've seen what money in politics does before, and it doesn't really guarantee you success.
Point taken.
All right. Well, there's this growing feud with Anthony Scaramucci and the president. Latest words from Scaramucci on CNN on President Trump.
unfortunately for him, it's like a little bit of a projection, right? He's obviously very nervous and neurotic. You can just tell by the way he's talking at these campaign rallies. I sort of feel bad for that. Secondarily, I never begged him for a job, so that's sort of ridiculous. I mean, everyone's blowing up. You saw my tweet about the revolving door with the backstabbing. Yeah. So he can say what he wants to say, and unfortunately, you know, he's dug in deep with the lies. He can't help himself. And, yeah, that's the White House Employment Agency right there.
Well, the strong words there from Scaramucci. The president responded, and we'll get your response, Sean. Here's the president.
I think Anthony is really somebody that's very much out of control. He wanted to come back into the administration for the last 5 months, begging me to come back in. I said, Anthony, I can't take you in. I'm sorry. He calls so much. He's a nervous, neurotic wreck.
A little hard to hear there yesterday, but he responded to Scaramucci, said he's very much out of control. He begged to come back to the administration for months. The president said, no, thank you. Sorry. What's going on here, Sean?
Well, I think what's going on is, I mean, Anthony obviously wants to express his view out there. I think it's unfortunate that he's doing this because if he really was a friend of the president, he would confide to him in confidence what his opinions and concerns were and give him sage advice to help him be successful based on what he believed. But going out there and going to a media outlet that is clearly not a friend of the president and being used, and that's what's happening here. It's catnip for the left-wing media to go out and use somebody like him to
Sean,
create a controversy.
Mercedes Schlapp was on our program yesterday. She was blasting Scaramucci. She was saying that his 11 days in the White House, everybody's scared to death of him. Is that your experience with Scaramucci?
Well, I have not and never will be scared of him. I do know that it wasn't, obviously, it was a very rocky tenure. Obviously, it was after I had announced that I was leaving the White House. But I do know that there was some concern about his management style, if you will. But it didn't last too long, and I think that was exactly what a lot of people had predicted, that he didn't have what it takes to do the job, and he moved on. I just wish that he had moved on and continued to support the president in a much more respectable way than he is right now. He has become, as I said, catnip for the left-wing media because they want to find somebody that's going to say whatever they will against him. I think where he's losing the battle is that the folks on the left and the media, they're going to use him for their soundbite to go against the media, to go against the president now, and then they'll forget him in a week. And that's just, you know, that's sad.
We will see how that turns out. Thank you, Sean Spicer, for
Thank you,
coming
Sean.
back today. Thank you, sir.
You bet, guys.
A lot
Thank you.
more in this coming up.